that's what I tell people in the meetings and guys I sponsor or clients I work with. I said, look, I'm no different than you. I'm just like you. I may have a little more time, probably because I woke up at 5 and you woke up at 7. But right now we're doing this side by side together. I don't, I always try to tell them, look, I don't have any more time than you do. All I have is today. I said, but I do tease them. And I go, because I know you didn't get up at 5, but I did get up at 5. So I got a couple hours on you. But all you got to worry about is just like what you're doing in the moment.
This is the Don't Hide the Scars podcast, presented by Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need.
Welcoming to Pain's Don't Hide the Scars podcast, the founder and spirit behind Fearless Happyness, Nick. What am
I got my first name wrong. Come on,
I'm trying
Jason.
to focus on the last name. Max Nijst. Thanks for joining our outreach coordinator, Julian Carvajal, and myself, Jason LaChance, on Don't Hide the Scars.
Well, Jason and Julian, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Oh boy, that was a wordy intro. Usually I'm much sharper on these things. I'll tell you, I've been buried in a computer screen too long today. We're going to jump all through your story. I mean, doing amazing work in your long-term recovery, motivational speaker, author, substance abuse counselor. You got your podcast, Fearless Happyness, which we'll have to see if we could get Julian, especially you want to talk to Flynn Anderson, the founder of Pain here for sure on that. But I want to start with a little bit of gratitude today. What do you say, Julian?
I'm always down for gratitude.
3 things you're grateful for.
Oh, I do my gratitude journal every day. So the first thing is I'm going to say I'm grateful to be here with you, Jason and Julian. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful that you have asked me to be here. Second is my wonderful doggies who bark at anything and everyone and are a good alarm systems, but I think if they actually came in, they'd run the opposite way. So that's all right. And then obviously for my recovery, if I make it to September, which I will, God willing, because God's always willing, I'll celebrate 22 years clean and sober.
Man.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right. Doesn't something like that, Julian, like especially when we're first new to recovery, it just sounds so daunting.
Yeah. I mean, even now, it still feels like, I mean, I'm 22 years old. That's one of the things I was going to say I'm grateful for is another year of life. Yesterday was my birthday, and I turned 22 years old.
No, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, especially to me, it's crazy that you've been sober for 22 years because that's how long I've been alive.
Yeah, that's great. Like I always have to pinch myself because like we were talking about before the show, like Julian was trying to be the Pablo Escobar of Fresno, right? I was probably trying to be the Pablo Escobar of Orange County, but the addiction gene kicks in and that goes flying out the window because I still have to pinch myself because I remember my first couple meetings, this guy was taking 10 years sober. And where I went, right in the facility, there was a bunch of us probation or on parole, right? Convict. They always call it, here comes the druggy buggy, right? And we all get off and we go into the meeting and right, oh, here's all the convicts, right? They called it the convict meeting because there was more of us than anybody else, right? But I had really some good mentors there. And when a guy took a 10-year chip, I was sitting next to my buddy and I'm going, he's lying. There ain't nobody freaking taking 10 years sober. I go, we couldn't even stay sober in jail. So let alone this guy's trying to tell me he's taking 10 years. Bull. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. But I'm still in awe on the power of faith and God and working the stuff because I think if I took it for granted, I wouldn't be here with you guys because I shared with Jason once when he was on my podcast, some of the things that happened in my life in my recovery. Right. So, like they say, we really have all we have is today. And I don't take that for granted. I'm grateful for every day I get to wake up sober and go to bed sober. Right. And that's how I try to break it out down to the clients that I work with. Right. I say, don't look at like, you got to get a year, you got to get 90 days. I said, all you got to do really is stay sober from the time you open your eyes to the time you go to bed. And that can be anywhere from 10 to 16 hours of a day. You really don't get 24 because you got to sleep, right? And we all can sleep sober because if we don't take a drug or a drink, right, we're going to, right? And they're all like, I never thought of that way before. And I said, that's how I've been doing it for almost, like I said, I've been doing a gratitude journal for almost 22 years. And it's a thing the gratitude is the thing that has kept me sober. I believe that every day, because when I get up and do my morning meditation, right, my readings, the 3rd and 7th step prayer, I always thank God. I go, God, I'm grateful that you're in my life, and I'm grateful for the sobriety you've given me. Please do not let me take advantage of it, and help me be helpful to some and harmful to none. And that's how I start my day, always with gratitude.
There was a young man who's at a recovery meeting that I was at, and forget why he brought it up when the desserts come out at the end and the coffee and stuff like that. And he's like, "You never take dessert." I'm like, sweets are a whole nother thing that it's just a struggle for me. So anyways, he goes, "Oh, how did you really get this time?" He had trouble staying like over 2 weeks sober. I'm like, "Well, think about it this way." And I, use his name. What time did you get up? "Oh, I got up for work at 4:00. I'm like, "Oh, you've been cleaner longer today than I have." It's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "You woke up before me. You've got more time today than I do, because I didn't get up till 7 when I should have probably been up around 4 or 5, Right. And it was like a light bulb went on to him about, what it means one day at a time, that it can sound daunting. Like I said, that 10 years, 20 years plus or whatever it is. But I also encourage anyone that's struggling, or their family members that might question if a loved one can stay clean, is no, Max, like you're an example. Yes, you can. Like those are the people that you want to dig into and ask them questions, learn about. When we say that saying, be around people that have what you want. We're not talking about the cars and the relationship, the marriage or whatever it is. We're talking about that time, that journey, that knowledge that is there. And so, I just encourage, if there's anyone that's newer that listens to us and you hear Max say the amount of years, the decades that you've had, decades plus, don't look at it as something daunting. Let it be known to you that, wow, this is achievable. And my 4 years, your 3, Julian's 3 years, you're 22 coming up on it, we're no more special. We're no more special. You can do it. Anyone can. You can do it.
That's what I tell people in the meetings and guys I sponsor or clients I work with. I said, look, I'm no different than you. I'm just like you. Right. And today I may have a little more time, probably because I woke up at 5 and you woke up at 7. But right now we're doing this side by side together. I don't, I always try to tell them, look, I don't have any more time than you do. All I have is today. I said, but I do tease them. And I go, because I know you didn't get up at 5, but I did get up at 5. So I got a couple hours on you. But all you got to worry about is just like what you're doing in the moment. You know what I mean? And you said it perfectly, Jason, right? That's what I did. After my last relapse, it wasn't about the cars. But for me, because I hadn't talked to my kids, and then I got sober and I started talking to them again. And then I relapsed and disappeared for 5 months. I wanted what people with long-term recovery had, right, with their families. So I hung around the guys that were married long-term, right? And either the wife was in Al-Anon and he was in program, or my friends were in Al-Anon and my friend, she was in program. So I watched them. Like, how do they treat each other? One, right? Because I haven't been with anybody in a long time, because I was off doing, the only thing I loved was the drugs and getting high. And then how am I going to be a better dad now that I'm sober? Right. Yeah. If she even lets me see my kids again, right, at that time. And so I had to watch. I did, just like you said, and also, how did people stay sober? Right. Because my last relapse, it was one day. It was at the sober living where I was at, but it felt like I was out there again for years. Right. That feeling of just going, oh my God, here we go again. Right. Like, and that's where I had like some divine interventions and people come in that never came to the facility on a weekend saying, oh, hey, Max, pack a bag, get out of here for 3 days, and I'll handle Steve and come back and test clean. Right. And I've been sober ever since. But it was like at that moment, as I was packing that bag, after the lady showed up and asked me, and I didn't lie, I said, I did it again. And she bear hugged me and said that. I remember I was packing the bag, and that's when I asked God, I said, look, God, you help me stay sober. If you keep me sober, I promise to do the work to stay sober. I go, I don't know what that looks like other than the 12 steps, right? Like, okay, I kind of did them half measures, the first couple times. This time I said, I will do the work and I will do whatever you need me to do. And here I am, like I said, with 21 years later, right? And thank God I had a sponsor that said, you're going to help. If someone needs your help, you're going to help them. And it doesn't mean program. You could be at the store and some old lady says, can you help me with the grocery bags? You're going to go, okay, I'll do it. You know what I mean? So service work has been a huge part of my recovery, right? I've had panels like for 2 years. I had panels in the beginning. I would, everything I would tell people, you should like, if they had an AA Nazi, that was me when I first got sober the last time, right? Because our facility was at the end of a cul-de-sac, right? And I'd have my car, I would sit on the back of my car and I'd see people coming from work or whatever, right? Because in the morning, we all had to go to meetings. But I was determined to go to 2 meetings a day, every day, 7 days a week. And I did for 3 years. And people would come work tired. And I said, look, put your stuff down, get in my car. We're going to a meeting. I don't want to go. Get in the car. We're going to a meeting. Most people agreed, but that was how people that didn't have a car, I would go, let's go. Mm-hmm. And, anything, I pull people, how many couches I moved in the beginning, right? Like, hey, I need your help this weekend. Can you move a couch for me? Or can you do this for me? I'm like, how many times I wanted to say no, but I realized I made a promise and I'm going to keep it. Right. Yeah. So whether it was a person in the program or not, or mom, right. Because of all the, the stuff I did to my mom when I was in my addiction, right. I would always be a yes man. And we can get to that part where I was a yes man, where I hated it, but I did it anyway.
I wanted to start this program because many months ago, I was dealing with some veterans. I just didn't like the way they were being treated. I didn't like the services that were being provided, for the lack of a better term. I think we need to do a better job with our veterans, and in essence, that's why I decided to start this. My biggest concern with veterans and substance use, especially with opioids, is that they're not getting the proper treatment. And it seems like for years they have not received the proper treatment for that. We decided to make sure that our veterans are going to be able to get the services they need in order to combat their addiction.
You bring up something really important, Max, about, situations of people that are parents and then get recovery. Would you mind sharing maybe what that process has been like for you, that reestablishing that relationship with your children and loved ones?
Wow. So that was a definitely work in progress, right? Because where I went, I got sentenced there, right? Because I was looking at 3 years in prison, and the judge literally every time I went back to court said, look, dude, you're not going to my streets because you don't listen. You don't do anything I ask you. So you have 2 ways to leave my jail. You go to prison, I put you on a bus to go upstate, or I find you a place, right? And at the time, I had no idea what AA or NA, right? Because all my experiences before that were to go to a meeting, I'd see a friend, and he would wink like, dude, beat me. We'd go out the back door and off. Right, Julian, you could probably relate. I don't know, Jason, but you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't ready for recovery. So we'd always end up getting, I would take off with a friend, and I never stayed at a meeting for more than 2 minutes. So, and then he said, you're going to do this stuff. You're going to have to sign court cards and so I get sober. And like I said, because when I went to jail the last time, my mom came and visited me about a weekend. And she, OCJ in Orange County at the Main. And I pick up the phone. She picks up the phone. And before I could say a word, she just looks at me and she says, I love you, son, but you're no longer welcome at my home. If you come near my home, I will call the police. And if I'm gone, my neighbors know that if you're around, call the police. What are you going to do? Right. And I was like, I don't know. But in her, and then she starts crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? I have to go back to my cell. You get to go home. And one thing she said is that was the best answer you've ever given me. Like, finally, right? I can't tell you how many empty promises I made in the past where she's picked me up from jail. And I said, Mom, I promise I'll get a job, right? Or I promise I'll find the kids so you can be grandma again, and all blah, 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 blah. And I got it later. That's why she was crying, right? Because I finally gave her an answer, because I really at the time had no clue what I was going to do. I was done, right? And I'm like kind of preparing myself. Well, I don't know what this judge is going to do, but I might go to prison, right? Because I've never done anything he's asked of me. And so, they find a place, and he tells me, I'm going to send you there, but you're going to go for a year. If you slip up once, 1 millimeter, I'm going to send you to prison. And so I finally get to the place right after doing almost 6 months in jail, right? Because they didn't have an open bed right away. So I'm stuck there, and they finally open a bed, and the process of recovery begins, right? Like, and I have no clue. Right. Because in my head, I'm still thinking, I mean, if you're an addict like me, or, like, I can do this for a little bit. And once I get the courts and the probation off my back, and I'm going to go do what I got to do, and I'm going to be right back at it. And so, like I said, you heard me say I half measured it the first 6 months, right, when I was there, because I wanted to look good, not only for the courts and my PO, but I want to look good in the rooms, right? Because I could memorize parts of the big book. I could tell you what page, what paragraph, and it's verbatim what it said, right? And it shared really well. And so the process happened about a week shy of 10 months. I relapsed for the first time. That was the worst one, right? I'd take off. I go back to the old neighborhood. I'm going to get my friends sober, because I am super sober, right? Like, I got 6 months, never had 6 months in my life, but I'm going to go get my homeboy sober. Well, I never even make it out of the house, right? And I'm back to doing what I was doing again. And 4 relapses later, like I showed that story where the lady, the director of the facility, showed up and saved my butt. Because if I would have tested, he would have had to turn that result in. I would have gotten in trouble, and I would have been, probation violation. You're going to prison now. So that was like that surrender I just told you about was like, okay, because I'm seeing my mom, right? Like, she's happy. I'm in a place, I'm safe, right? Because it got to the point it was so bad. Like, my mom wanted nothing to do with me. Like, she wouldn't even answer my collect calls from jail, right? The only thing she would do is if she heard, this is so-and-so calling collect from a facility she knew, because she had gone through the same thing with my brother, right? She would go, I wouldn't even hear. I just hear the click. Okay. Like, I would knew in her head, he's safe. I know he's locked up. He's not doing anything stupid. Because I don't know about you guys, but I would take her car, like, knowing she had to go to work. I would take her car, leave for a few days, because I'm off getting high somewhere, right? Tweaking in her car. Or I never messed with her car. I just used it as transportation. Thank God. Right. But so that process of rebuilding. So you got to understand, when I got sober, when I got to that facility, I started writing my ex-wife letters every week. Hey, I'm sober. I'm in a place. I'm doing good. I'm staying sober. I'm working, right? Even though they were odd jobs, right? Because I hadn't worked in 9 years. I did that for like 6 months. And then I got like my first real job in sobriety, right? I got my brand new flip phone. I feel like I'm on top of the world. But she hasn't answered any of my letters. So I'm resigning to the fact that she just wants nothing to do with me, because because of my addiction, I hadn't seen my kids for 9 years.
Right.
It got that bad. Or I could be in the house next door to them, but the guilt and shame we talked about, Jason, right, it would get so bad that I would either wait till they went to bed, right? And I wait, shift change for the police department. So I knew they weren't out cruising around, and I would take off, do my thing. Or I'd wait till they went to school the next day, right? They couldn't, mom's at work, and they would never see me. So I'm at this job. I'm going to the truck to get a tool, and my phone rings. And I answer it, and hello. And it's this lady, right, that I didn't even recognize. It was my ex-wife. She says, hey, Max, it's Susan. The kids want to see you. I got your letters finally. I'm down by San Diego and El Cajon. Come see the kids. And I nearly faint. You know what I mean? Because I'm thinking, this girl, like, my knees, I'm just like, what? Like, pinch me, somebody, because this can't be real, right? Well, I start seeing those kids with my brother, and I'll get into that later. God rest his soul. But every weekend he would go with me down to El Cajon. We'd go pick up my kids. We'd take them to like, those little like miniature golfing places that have, and I'm seeing my kids. And then again, fast forward, I tell you, like a week before 10 months, I relapsed. And then, so what happened is I disappeared on them for 5 months again. Right. In her head and their head, it's another 9 years, right? Because I'm seeing my dad, right? And she says, long story short, I'm about 30 days sober. My sponsor says, don't call her. Let me help you with that, right? Because that's why we have them as our sponsor, right? They're supposed to be wiser than us, right? To kind of give us direction. But like, it's 5:00 in the sober living. Everybody's cooking dinner. Everybody's home. And I get this bright idea to call her. Hello? Yeah, this is Max. Sorry you haven't heard from me for 5 months, but I relapsed. Man, let me tell you that like she started like you made up cuss words, right? Like things to this day I didn't understand. Right. In my head, she's doing the whole exercise, her head spinning around, she's spitting green pea soup at me. Just the whole 9 yards, right? But the last thing I do remember,
out of your ears and everything.
Dude, like I'm thinking, like, I don't know if you remember this movie called Scanners, right? Like where they use their mind to blow up other people's heads, right? Like I thought that was gonna happen to me, right? Like she's gonna be that because she was that pissed. So she's yelling, and you know what I mean. But the thing that stuck out, she says, "You will never see the kids as long as I live, ever." Bam! Like slams the phone down, right? And of course, my friends that were all listening, right? Because you could hear her throughout the whole house. She sounds pissed. And I looked at him like, you think? Right. So I tucked my tail between my legs and called my sponsor the next day and told him what I did. And he's like, you're an idiot. Like, I told you not to do that. Right. That's why my nickname was Idiot my first year. I stayed sober, but I did shit that I shouldn't have done. Right. Right, like the kid that touched the fire. That's hot. No, it's not. It's hot. I told you. So he gave me some specific direction, and that began the rebuilding of that relationship. So what would happen is every week on my way to work or after work, I would have to call her and say, "Look, Susan, I'm sober. I'm working." And then the caveat was that if she called me names, I had to say, "You're right." Click, hang up. That happened for about a year straight, every week. And sometimes not even that, right? It would be like, Evan, don't call me. Click. I didn't even get a word in edgewise, right? But I kept working my program, right? I kept doing what I promised God. I would go to meetings every day. I was honestly and thoroughly working my steps as best I could. And it was 2 days before Thanksgiving one year. I get this call from my ex. Hey, we're back in Orange County. I'm staying with my parents. Be at their house for Thanksgiving. Don't be late. I haven't missed a Thanksgiving or a Christmas for 21 years. Right? Because that Christmas, I got to make amends to her, to my children, to my ex-in-laws. And it was what I've learned in recovery is integrity, right? What I had to learn, because I was the total opposite in my addiction, right, is say what I mean and mean what I say and do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. Yeah. Right. And that's how, right. Because after my last relapse, my mom's like, I don't even want you coming into my house. Like, you're not allowed to come over. Like, I couldn't even go over there for a year. So like, I got to go see her and then my kids almost about the same time. Right. And, but I kept doing that, right? My sponsor would say, you go to meetings, you just keep working on yourself, right? Keep having faith, keep having trust in God, because it's going to pay off. And it did, right? And I was able to that year see him for Thanksgiving. I saw him for, made my amends to her and that everybody at their house on Christmas that year. But the one thing I want your audience to know, though, it's not always perfect, right? Like, you make mistakes, but you learn from them, right? And what the program and what the recovery has done for me and what the 12 step has done for me is I get to make things right, like quickly, instead of stewing on it and let that guilt and shame built up on my end, right? And go, oh my God, I did it again, right? Like, because we know, all of us here today, Julian, Jay, like that guilt and shame kicks in. That's one of the two biggest emotions that keep addicts using.
Yeah.
I believe, in my heart of hearts, right? Because I've experienced it. When guilt and shame would get so great, it was like I knew what to do to get rid of it. Right?
Yeah.
Some alcohol, some meth, boom. I didn't have to feel nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And then it was the same thing with my mom. I built that trust up with her. And one day she called me over to her house and she says, I need you to do me a favor. Right. And I go over there and I get there. Hey, Mom, how you doing? She says, I need you to do me a favor. I go, sure. What do you need me to do? And she hands me a check for $500, cash for $500, and her bank card. It says, will you go deposit this for me? As I'm holding this, I'm looking at her. You know what I mean? I'm like, Mom, do you know who you're talking to here? And she goes, I do. Right. My prayers got answered. Can you do that for me? Of course I did. I went and came right back and gave her the receipt to show her I was deposited. Right. And it was moments like that where I knew that this recovery thing was starting to work in my life, and I could build my relationships back with, family members, brothers, sisters, right? My brother and I, who used together, right? When it got bad, we hated each other. We could not be in the same house together, right? For more than 5 minutes, because we'd brawl, right? Because like he thought he ran the house, like he was, I mean, like, no, I run the house. I'm your older brother. I'm going to kick your ass if you don't shut up and blah, blah, blah. But we both got sober around the same time. And for 8 years, I had a brother I always wanted, and he had a brother I always wanted. We were close. We became what brothers should be, right? He was doing his recovery, right, where he lived, and he went to meetings, and he had a sponsor, and I was doing my thing in my part of town. But when we get together, right, we made amends to each other for a few things that we had go on in our lives back in our addiction. Funny story, right? So when I got divorced, right, I got like all the camping gear. That's all I want. I don't care what I get. Give me the camping gear, right? Because it was like top-notch camping gear, right? So
that's a hell of a justification,
right?
I want the camping gear.
Yeah,
it was top-notch. You don't get how top-notch this was. I mean, this is like the great Coleman grill here,
Yeah, right. Because I'm thinking to myself, if I ever get kicked out of the house, I got to have something to sleep in, right? Like I need my sleeping bag that I know I can sleep in a snowstorm and still be warm, right? So I'm trying to think ahead here, right?
That's also such an addict mindset, like the acceptance of, well, dang, it's horrible. I'm getting a divorce, and I really want to get a home established so I can have my time with the kids. It's like, just give me the camping gear so I don't freeze my ass off.
Right. Could you imagine back in then? Hey, bring the kids over. Where are you at? You'll find the tent over on the side of the house, right? Like, Mom kicked me out, but I'm not going very far.
I'm about a quarter off the I-5. Just have them swing on by. I'm the one with the nice Coleman grill.
There you go. And then my brother had this really nice, like, boombox, right? So
this was a big deal back then, Julian. Trust me.
Yeah, it was really nice, right? I get released from LA County, right? I have no one to pick me up. So I take a cab thinking, oh, someone will give me money to pay for it. Well, Mom's not home. Nobody's home. I'm like, dude, how am I going to pay this guy, right? So I walk out with my bike that I had and my brother's boombox. And I said, here, dude, I don't have money, but I'll give you this. And luckily the cab driver goes, okay, cool. It was a nice mountain bike, right? So he's like, okay, sure. Right? Like, thanks for not running on me, at least giving me something, right? I'm like, thank you. So for years, right? Like, I wondered, where did my camping gear go, right? Like, I came home one day, it was gone, right? And my brother came home one day and yelling at me, like, where's my radio? I go, what are you talking? I haven't even been home. I've been locked up. Like, I don't know where your radio is, right? Blew him off. So years later, when we're sober, he takes me out to lunch. He goes, I want to talk to you. I'm like, all right. I go, I want to talk to you too, right? So we're done with lunch, right? He has his daughter. She's maybe not even a year old, just still a baby, right? We go out to the parking lot and he sits there on the trailer, what he had behind his truck. And he goes, I'm going to start. I go, cool. He goes, I need to make amends to you, brother. You know, I love you. But remember that camping gear that you had? Yeah. What happened to it? He goes, I collected it. I just want to make sure I want to make amends and say sorry for doing that. And I bust out laughing. And he's looking at me. My little niece is looking at me like, what the hell is Uncle Max doing? Right. I go, you know, that boombox you had? That was very important. I go, I gave it to a taxi driver to pay for my cab fare. And he's like, he starts laughing. I go, I want to make amends. I go, let me take you out to lunch next week. And we had, I mean, people were driving by because we were laughing, right? Because we kind of knew, but we didn't know. Because I was like, where did my gear go? Like, I bet you my brother took that. And I'm sure he was like, I know my brother did something with that. But we ended up making amends to each other, right? And so how that relationship started building again and building trust and with my family members and, you know, especially mom, right? Because all the stuff I had pulled. Right. I don't know if you've heard of Hoag Hospital, right? They got a treatment program, right? And they all now have one of two hospitals in the state of California that has an RTC program, a residential on site. So I was there when they opened that. And so my mom, I worked on the peninsula of Newport Beach, right? Which is right by Pacific Coast Highway. You can see the beach. Well, my mom lived in Brea, right? And with no traffic, about 45 minutes to an hour away. Well, here's how I built that relationship back up with my mom. She'd call me at 4:30. What you doing, Max? Oh, I'm working, Mom. Like 4:30. You know there's traffic. My TV doesn't work. Can you come and fix the TV? Like, oh, you got to be kidding. Yeah, I didn't say, but like in my head, I'm going, you got to be effing kidding me. 4:30 and she wants me to come out there, right? Yeah, Mom, I'll be there. And I would get in the car and I'd drive there, right? It'd take me hour and a half, 2 hours to get there because of traffic. Of course, I walk in, I go, hi, Mom, just give her a kiss and a hug. How you doing? And she goes, oh, it works. Never mind. And I would go, Mom. And she goes, no, I fixed it. I'm serious. But then she'd always go, do you want to go get dinner? I'm hungry. And I go, Mom, if you brought me here just to go, you know me, I love food. Just tell me you want me to come take you out to dinner. I'll come take you out to dinner. She goes, no, seriously, it works now. I fixed it. I'm like, but she did that like a lot. Like, but I would just go, okay. So it's things like that, right? That I learned, right? Yeah. And
well, I'll tell you. Let me jump in real quick, man. And I think that's something that I really want the listener, watcher to take away. Especially if you're in recovery, those beautiful opportunities like that to build trust, they are going to come. They're going to come. I know, Julian, you had some with your folks. You know, Julian, because your mom's had long-term recovery, so I know those opportunities were presented to you too to prove trust, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's no matter who the person is, even if you're not an addict. Like whenever we meet a new person or some form of trust is broken between any relationship between two people, there's always gonna need to be situations where trust is established to continue the relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, a friendship, or family.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I can already tell, Max, we're gonna need to do a part 2. There's just too much to dig in with you.
There's 21 years, bud.
Yeah, right. We didn't even get into any childhood stuff or how you got into, but that is also why you do have a book, which that link will be in the podcast description. But I do want to ask about when you decided that you were going to write a book. That's a big thing for some people, and you know, there's different intents. Some people, it's like, I'm going to do it because I'm going to be a big author, whereas other people just have to share their story. And I know for you is a situation of you just had to share your story and the outcome, whatever it would be, but it's been a beautiful outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So at the time so what happened previous to the release of my book, I had been sitting on it for like 10 years, right? So a friend of mine that I met online that I've become really good friends with, he's not in recovery, right? But he's big on personal development and we just became friends because we clicked. Well, here's how God works, right? So I told him one day back when I started this, I said, I want to write a book. And he goes, you have an outline? No. What's an outline? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. He goes, got to have an outline, right? Okay. He goes, I tell you what, I won't charge you, but I'll sit with you and we'll get your outline done. So we sat and did this outline for hours, right? We came up with the outline, the different chapters. But let me tell you something. This is how God worked in my life, right? Because little did I know at the time that friend of mine was going through a rough time of his own. He was sitting in an apartment where about everything was about to get turned off, and he's on the East Coast. So imagine during the winter, he's about to lose electricity, heat, right? And I wouldn't find this out till 10 years later that he did this for me, right? So fast forward, what happens is I lose my sister 3 days after I turned 13 years sober. And then 8 months later, on my way to Minnesota, my brother would hang himself and lose his battle to addiction. Right. And I'm like, okay, it clicked in my head. Like, I got to finish this book. I got to write this book. So he was like the second person I called when I found out about my brother. I said, dude, like, he was a close friend. Right. So I called my sponsor first, of course. And I'm like in the middle of a Denny's and I'm losing my shit because I'm in tears, right? I just lost my little brother. So I called this guy and I said, I need to finish this book. Can we do that? And he goes, just do what you got to do and we'll get it. So I start working on the book because for me, you said it perfectly, right, Jason and Julian? What happened was I knew it was going to be a healing process for me to get my story out. Right? Not caring if it was going to be a Nobel Prize winning book or whatever you call that for authors, right? Or even a bestseller. I have to get this out, like put pen to paper and share my stories so that if someone reads it, maybe it helps one person.
Well, that's what it says in the big book, is that the entire purpose of the program is to help another alcoholic or another person in recovery. And that's how we stay sober.
Right. And that was my way of giving back what Alcoholics Anonymous had given me for up to that time, 10 years, right? Like, of a wonderful life, you know? And so I finished the book and I get it out because with my wife who I'm with now, right? Part of her story is in that. And I had to get her permission to kind of share what happened. I didn't get into detail, but, and I'll tell you guys what happened off air. I can even tell here because it's part of my story also, right? But in that, she used to date my brother. So here's the part. This is what I want people to understand, the power of recovery, right? Like, I knew about her a week before I left Minnesota when I was with my ex-fiance, right? But we were supposed to meet up at my mom's. Long story short, where he never shows up. I'm at my mom's. He calls me on a Saturday, right? He's supposed to show up. But I was in the restroom. I call him back, no answer. I take off on, I think it was a Monday with me and my ex. We start heading out. I'm calling him, no answer. Like, that's weird. Usually he calls me back. Well, it was that Tuesday when we got to Denver. We're sitting in the Denny's is when I got the call from my older brother saying, hey, our brother's gone. Right? I'm like, if you knew my brother, he's a very spontaneous type of guy, right? Like, he would pick up his family after work and say, get in, we're going to go camping. Or he would get on his bike, his Harley, and go ride for hours, right? That's what he liked to do. And I'm thinking, I go, what do you mean he's gone? When he go on a camping trip or something, or plane trip somewhere? And that's when I heard my brother cry for the first time ever. He said, no, our brother hung himself. He's gone. And I just would I was in shock, right? But what happened is, right, and this might be a little, I don't want to be graphic, but my wife and I talk about it all the time, right, to try to heal from it. But my brother FaceTimed her while he was hanging himself. So the power of recovery, where I'm getting at, is like through all that, like time finding that out, like I didn't think about using. I may have had a brief second because I was in a Denny's at Denver, and we know that Colorado weed's free. Well, I'm looking out the windows, I'm crying tears, right? And there's a big billboard that says, we have the best marijuana and we deliver, right? So for a brief second, I was like, That's why I called my sponsor. I said, I better call my sponsor right now. Right. Because I could have I've left Orange County. All my recovery peeps and everybody that I care about is in Orange County. And I'm in I could have left because my fiance was a normie, right? I could have said, hey, why don't you go to the room? I'll go get us something to eat.
Right.
You know how addicts work. I would have went to the first dive bar I saw and I would have walked in. I would have had that big neon sign looking for drugs, right? Or I would have saw the guy that you got drugs. I'm going to hit you up, right? But that didn't happen, right? Because I knew because I had people at that time, because I had just lost my sister and my brother. And they're like, dude, like people in the program go, dude, you got every reason. Like I know people that would have used after stubbing their toe. And I'm like, no, like I was taught there's no reason to pick up a drink or a drug ever again.
No,
and what kept flashing to my brain was that promise I made to God that I would stay sober no matter what. Right. And my sponsor always taught me, if you don't drink or use, there's always hope. Don't ever lose hope. So I went through that process, right? And I got to Minnesota, flew back the very next day to be with my family, right? And I was dreading seeing my mom. Not because I didn't want to see her, because I would see she just lost two kids. And I remember walking into my sister's house and she just looked at me crying, like, why? Like, why? What? How? You know what I mean? And how do you answer that, right? And they say don't lie in the program, but my siblings and I got together and said, we're not going to tell mom what happened. We're just going to let her believe it was an overdose, because if we would have told her what he did, I think it would have killed her quicker. Because 6 months to the day from when he died, she died on Thanksgiving Day. And I got to spend 6 months every Monday night with her. Right. That was that part of that trust building with the family, right? That Max, Monday night is your night. And they knew I would show up every day. My wife helped me get there. We were, dating at the time, fiance, whatever. And, I lived 2 hours away and she would come pick me up after work and bring me home. And every Monday I'd show up again. Whoops. And, right. But here's the gift of rebuilding that trust. So it was 2 weeks before my mom passed away. Monday night, it's my night. And I'm sitting with her. We're watching the show of hers, at one of her favorite shows. And she's like, I'm sitting next to her and she's like reaching over, rubbing my leg. You know what I mean? Like, Mom, what's up? Are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm okay. And she looks at me. I had turned 14 years sober, but she looks at me and she said, thank you for 13 years of your sobriety, for giving me 13 years sober. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't, that's a gift you can't put a price on. I still get choked up when I think about that. I wanted to tell her it was 14, but I'm not going to correct Mom. But I'm like, you're welcome, Mom. Thank you for never giving up on me. She goes, God answered my prayers. And I said, thank you for always praying for me. Yeah. And she would die 2 weeks later. You know what I mean? And that following Monday after my mom passed away, I put my daughter in treatment for the first time, my youngest. As recently as 5 years ago, right? Just to give your audience what's happened to me, right? Or 6 years ago this year, I would lose a granddaughter at 3 months and a day old. Watch her. I'm in the emergency room with my stepdaughter, watching my little baby granddaughter get put on life support. She passes away. A week later, I'm heading to work. I get a call from my daughter, who's hysterical. Said, can you see your son? He's in the hospital. He's dying. What are you talking about? Well, my son he had a massive stroke and almost died of a massive stroke. So now I'm in that emergency room after they transferred him from the hospital. I'm watching him get put on life support a week later. And I'm just thinking to myself, all right, God, I know this is a way for you to see if I'll keep my promise, but trust me, I'm going to keep my promise. Right. But I got to be there. Here's the beauty of recovery, right? And the people out there in recovery and the friends I've made, right? So you couldn't sleep with my son, right? Because I drove 2 hours down to the hospital. So I'd sleep in my car every night. And, Higgy, right? And I've made friends with all these online people as well as people in the program, right? And I'm giving like updates and, letting people know what's going on and all this stuff. And it was like day 6 or whatever of my son being on life support, or day 7. And Aaron, I forget her. I always forget her last name, but friend we all know, right, is messaging me going, check your messages. And I'm like in tears, right? Because I'm giving everybody updates about my son. And I'm like, dang, Aaron, like your trip, like stop, right? Check your messages. Well, I checked my messages, and all those people I'd made friends with all put me up in a hotel for 3 days, paid for. Because they found out I was sleeping in my car. They're like, dude, you're not going to sleep in your car. Like we're going to put you in a hotel room. They found me one right down the street, and I was able to the last 3 nights to stay in a hotel room, right, and be with my son. But I know that it's all over the place, but that's just a portion of, but that's that tough part where if there's any parent or there's any addict going, this can't be done, I just gave you proof that it can.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This is very serious things that happened in my recovery. It's just like, but I did the things that were suggested. I worked the steps. I stay in contact with people. Like I meet new friends. Like now I got Jason on my side. I got Julian on my side, right? Like we're all in recovery and we may not know each other, but if Jason or Julian call me and say, hey, Max, I need to talk. You're damn straight. I'm going to go, okay, what do you want to talk about? I got you. Right. That's just how it works, right? Like that's your extent. Like talk about a huge extended family. I got a huge extended family. I did a lot of meetings in 3 years, twice a day, right? But I don't know, recovery, like if I can, for the addict, remember it takes time to build trust. If that's what we're still, right, you're going to have to show the people around you through your actions that you mean business, that you want to stay sober and that you're going to stay sober, right? On the parent side, remember, I've been through it too. I've been on both sides. I understand that things are going to happen. They're going to have ups and downs. They're going to have good days and bad days. You can't expect them to be perfect all the time now that they're sober, right? Like I got this perfect child. They're sober now. They're still human. They're going to make mistakes. And what I tell parents when I work with parents is you're in recovery too. So you need to find your support system. You need to go to Al-Anon or whatever, adults of,
Payne, we got a local meeting. You can show up or you can show up online. That link is in the podcast description. Every Wednesday night, Flynn Anderson gets on there and he's been doing it. Flynn's been doing it 13 years now?
I don't know, but a long time, man.
Yeah. Didn't your folks do it for a while? And that's kind of how,
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, it is. The
It's
recovery process is
extremely
all
helpful.
the family.
And I was thinking about that I was appreciative that you said that, brought up the family part. And, as an addict, I tend to speak to other addicts and less so to families, but I have spoken to families, but a lot of it is, I think a lot of addicts feel entitled, like, hey, I just got sober. Like, why are you not helping me? Like, you always wanted me to get sober. Now I did it. And now you're treating me like shit. And they get all upset about it. And I was like that too, obviously, when I first got sober. I thought like, man, why are you doing this to me? And I mean, our families don't owe us anything really. Like it's nice if they learn to trust us, if they give us the opportunity to earn that trust back, but they don't owe us anything. Like I think
Absolutely.
we expect too much from people sometimes, and just because they're your family doesn't mean they owe you anything more than any random stranger would. We can't expect
Absolutely.
them to do these things, and it's our fault that trust was lost in the first place, and it's our responsibility to gain that back if we so choose. And if they choose, they never have to, no matter what we do, and we have to accept that.
Right. And I always tell the clients that I work with as a counselor, right? Like you got to give this, it's got to be a slow process, right? Because
It takes a long
they owe me
time.
this. And I like you, Julian. I said, no, they don't owe you nothing.
Yeah.
I go, let's review your life. Okay. They just found you in the bed, almost dead of an overdose. How do they owe you? And they go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the time they bailed you out of jail because you got busted for drugs. Oh,
It's because a
yeah.
lot of times when we're in our addiction and early recovery, we still have that victim mentality of everything. We think everything that it happened to us or is being done to us, and we can't see what we have done to others.
Exactly.
And that's what
and
I
we're all
traveled.
guilty of that in
Yeah,
early. I
absolutely.
was totally like, look at me now. I'm sober.
Oh,
Well, that
Right.
was my thing, was that my mom's in recovery, and so I'd been going to AA meetings since I was like a child. But when I was about 13, I started going because I was smoking weed and drinking, and I would basically like I mean I wouldn't really call it a relapse because I wasn't really trying to be sober, but I'd stop for like a month or two anytime my parents caught me, and then I'd continue using and just pretend like I was sober.
got to get
Um,
that heat off, man.
yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
eventually, like I went to treatment and everything because they persuaded me to do so. But finally, this last time that I got sober, I sought out treatment myself. I was the one who called Flint and got myself into treatment. And so I thought like, I deserve to be rewarded for this, and my mom was like, "Oh, you have to go to sober living or you're homeless. Like you're not coming home." Just like you said, like my mom
Yeah.
said, like you have no place here anymore. And I was like, "What the fuck is this, man? Like I'm finally doing what you want. I finally put myself into treatment. I'm taking the initiative to do it, and not only do you not reward me, you punish me for it." And that's the way I truly saw it. And now I understand that she was doing what's best for her and for me.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
I know looking back, like I would not have stayed sober if she had not made me leave home.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Those
that's
unforeseen gifts.
Yeah, and that's why I try to
exactly.
tell family members, like when I do speak to um, families at the parent meeting we have or just in general, is I always tell them like you owe them nothing, and they're the ones that owe you. And a lot of times I think parents, I don't know what it is with the last like generation or two, is parents seem to forget that they're parents, that they have authority over their children. They are not equals. And I feel like I have to continuously tell people this, like your child is not your equal. They are your subordinate, and you will treat them that way because that is
Right.
how it's supposed to be. And that's the only way they learn, truthfully. Like that's the only way that I learned anything. And I think it's very common for young men is to test that authority. And I did that very much throughout my teenage years. And the only thing that kept me from being worse than I was and allowed me to fall in line and learn to have discipline was my father being heavy-handed with me when it was necessary.
Right.
Because I always knew that I could not tell my dad what to do. I could not control my parents. Like I knew that my mom would not take any shit from me. And if I pushed the line too far, my dad would beat the shit out of me.
Right.
And so those were the things that I try to remind people, especially parents and loved ones, is that yes, try to be compassionate towards the addict, but you also have to be firm in your own beliefs. You have to demand what is right for you
Mm.
before what is right for them, because they're hoping that if they're nice enough, the person will change. But the problem
Right.
is that person may never change, and you need to do what's right for you, and they will learn how to fit into that. And then they will, because for me, I had to learn how to fit into everyone in my life before I can learn who I was and how I developed on my own.
Yeah.
Right. See, but on the other end of that, I always like to say, like, I've had parents go, "Hey, we're going on vacation for 90 days. Fix them. We'll be back."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I've had to tell parents,
Too
whoa,
often.
that's not how it works, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
this,
yeah.
this has to be a family affair, right?
Absolutely.
Meaning that,
Absolutely.
and I would always say the statistics prove the more support you give your recovering addict, the more success they're going to have. Doesn't mean you have to fold or
Yeah,
do
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
they say, right?
Exactly.
But you participate in their recovery as well as your own, and you come back together with healthy boundaries on both sides.
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to build the family back. But you telling us to fix them and everything's going to be hunky dory when you get back from vacation, we know that's not going to work, and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a process, right? That's why the statistics prove long-term treatment works, right? Like
Yeah.
I even believe 90 days is just scratching the surface, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was in
Right.
treatment
But
for a year.
that's
The
why
whole
the judge
first
told me,
year.
I think he
Yeah.
knew better. Like, dude, you're going for a year. And if you don't like it, I'll send you to prison. Right. Cause he knew that because like Salvation Army came up 6 months. He goes, that's not enough time for this guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? You know what I mean? I'm like, what do you mean that's not enough time, right? Come on, man. But I'm glad that he saw something in me, because this judge rarely gave third chances, and he gave me our second chances. He gave me a third. Yeah. And I actually got to thank him when I was 3 years sober, had paid off all my probation fines, everything, sit in his court and thank him in front of the whole courtroom. I said, Your Honor, you don't remember me, but 3 years ago, you sent me to this place called Pacific Park, and I'm standing here with 3 years sober. If my kids were here, they would run and give you a hug for giving their daddy back. So thank you. Yeah. And you could hear a pin drop. And he's like, wow, no one's ever thanked me before. And I said, well, I'm glad I'm the first. I truly I go, thank you. He goes, I've probably sent 5,000 guys to prison since then. He goes, yeah, you're right. I don't remember you, but thank you for coming in. You just, I could see in his face, I just made his day, for thanking him. Right. Yeah. And I'm we could be here all day, but I got moments where all that paid off, right? Where I'm working with a client. I got to go to court with them. And the judge finds out I had this judge who gave me a third chance. He's like, what? How do you do that? And he goes, come here, sir, stand up, get up to the podium. How many years you got? 11. Wow. See everybody. And she made me turn around. She goes, this guy is a perfect example. If you do what is suggested, in our case, if you do what we tell you, right? You can, right. So thank you for being here and showing everybody it works. And it was a big courtroom. I'm just I'm thinking about those moments, and I'm like, wow, how does that happen to a guy like me? Because all of us have those moments. This is not going to be me. I'm not going to be sober. I can't stay sober in jail. How am I going to stay sober on the streets?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Hey, we're going to have to just figure it out when we're going to do a part 2 of this here. Yeah, but please tell people about the podcast, where they can find it, maybe the recovery coaching work as well. If they want to get connected with you, whatever you want to drop.
All right. Well, thanks you guys for having me here. But if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called the Fearless Happyness Podcast, and the happiness has a Y in it. Ask Jason. He was just on it the other day. You can find it on all the major platforms, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, everywhere. If you want to work with me, I work. I have a private practice. You can go to maxnijst.org. It'll tell you exactly what I do. I help clients with sober coaching / substance abuse counseling and accountability. Right. And you can find me all over the social medias. I'm on Facebook as max.nijst. That's Nijst. I'm on LinkedIn, Max Nijst. I'm on Twitter. Well, it's not Twitter, it's X. I'm on X. I'm on Threads. I'm on Instagram. I have 2 pages. One is for my podcast, the Fearless Happyness Podcast. And then my personal page is the Fearless Happyness Ninja. One of my friends who's not in recovery coined that phrase for me. And if I can give them my number. If anybody just has questions, you could always reach out and get on a call, and I'm always willing to try to help where I can.
Absolutely. Julian, anything else you want to add?
I appreciate you being on, man. I look forward to doing this again.
And on that note, thank you very much for either watching or listening to Pains Don't Hide the Scars.